Good evening. Good evening to all of you who are in upper room. Tonight's message is about wars and rumors of wars. In Matthew 24:6, it speaks about wars and rumors of wars. And Jesus warned that this is only the beginning of things that's going to take place in the last days. If you look at this chart here I'm giving to you, you can see there are so many countries at war right now. At least 10 countries are in war. And it's no longer a safe place in many parts of the world. And where is this leading to, the question? If you look at this chart, this is a very important chart of the world map. The blue in color is all the countries that's associated to the Western world or Western allies. That is namely America, Iceland, Canada, Europe, United Kingdom, Australia, and New Zealand. You see, these are Western countries. And if you look on the other side of the coin, will be Russia and China, which occupy the other half of the world today. They are aligned according to whom they are friendly with. If you look at this alignment, with America, you have Europe, UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Iceland, Philippines, South Korea, Japan, India, Malaysia, Saudi Arabia, parts of Africa, and part of South America that support the America agenda. While on the right-hand side, you have China, Russia, North Korea, Pakistan. Those that are in red are actually countries that has nuclear weapons. And if you look at the side of the left side, under America, only America have nuclear weapon, and probably India. The rest doesn't have nuclear weapon. Some of the countries support not very strongly, but I list it that these are the alignments of the nation as far as the world is concerned today. So with China, you have Russia, North Korea, Pakistan, Myanmar, Vietnam, Manchuria, Sri Lanka, Venezuela, Nicaragua, Brazil, Mexico, Iran, Cuba, and some parts of Africa which is growing in support for China. Now I'm going to play you a video to help you capture some very important things about this war.
This video was brought to you by Incogni. 2023 has been a dramatic year, with conflicts across the globe from Israel to Sudan and Myanmar to Colombia. And all of this chaos can make the news hard to follow. So in this video, we thought we'd go through every new and ongoing war in 2023. And a quick warning, there's quite a few. Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos. So, to give this video some structure, we're going to go continent by continent, beginning with the Americas, with Mexico, where the long-running war on drugs has escalated recently, despite the country's president pledging it would end in 2018. In January, there were clashes between the Mexican army and the Sinaloa cartel following the arrest of drug lord El Chapo's son. In fact, this spike in violence was so significant that it prompted some US Republicans to call for US military intervention against cartels in Mexico, something that the Mexican president rejected as irresponsible and offensive. In Colombia, the country's 60-year civil conflict is still ongoing. A historic peace agreement did see Marxist guerrillas from FARC, the country's biggest rebel group, lay down their arms in 2017. But dissidents and other groups like the ELN remain active. While there have been some clashes with FARC dissidents recently, a 6-month ceasefire with the ELN did begin in August, and a 10-month ceasefire with FARC dissidents is due to begin this month. Over in Europe, the war in Ukraine has continued throughout 2023, with Ukrainian forces earlier this year relaunching their much-awaited counteroffensive aimed at breaking through Russian lines and recapturing territory. Though in reality, this progress has been pretty slow and grueling. This year has seen an increase in attacks by Ukraine on Russian-occupied territory and Russia proper, largely using both air and sea drones, including a second attack on the Crimean Bridge and multiple drone strikes targeting Moscow. Next up, let's move to Africa, where insurgencies aren't always confined within borders. And that's particularly true for West Africa, where there's an ongoing Islamist insurgency by Al-Qaeda and IS-linked groups, which have continued to plague the region, which itself has further been destabilized by a series of coups. For instance, Nigeria continues its battle with Boko Haram in its north, while Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger are among the worst affected by insurgencies. In Mali, Al-Qaeda-linked insurgents are besieging the city of Timbuktu, and there's been a resumption of hostilities with Tuareg-led separatist groups in the north. While the coup in Niger back in July raised the risk of an interstate conflict, as West Africa bloc ECOWAS threatened to launch a military intervention if the ousted president was not reinstated. But this ECOWAS intervention now looks unlikely for a variety of reasons. Islamist insurgencies are also ongoing in East Africa too, most notably in Somalia, where the government is currently trying to seize back control of territory held by al-Shabaab, who have also carried out attacks across the border in Kenya. In Sudan, a civil war between the Sudanese armed forces and the Rapid Support Forces paramilitary erupted in April, which has now resulted in more than 9,000 fatalities and millions of refugees, with most of them taking place in Khartoum and the western region of Darfur. Ethiopia is also still in conflict, despite a formal end of the Tigray War in November of last year. That's because this year conflict broke out in the country's Amhara region over the Ethiopian army's attempts to disarm the regional militia called Fano, prompting the Ethiopian government to declare a 6-month state of emergency back in August. Also in Eastern and Central Africa, the Democratic Republic of Congo continues to face a series of protracted armed conflicts involving rebel groups in its east, while the Central African Republic's civil war is still ongoing after more than a decade. Though with the help of the Wagner Group and others, the government says that it's now restored its authority over 85% of the territory. Nonetheless, the situation remains volatile, and there's grave concern over the human rights situation in the region. In the Middle East, Syria's civil war is still going 12 years on, though President Assad now looks safe in his position and frontline fighting has mostly subsided. Nonetheless, Syria is still far from peaceful, and there's recently been an uptick in violence, as Turkey, which occupies some of northern Syria, has taken a more aggressive stance towards US-backed Kurdish militants in the southeast. Violence between Israel and Palestine hasn't been limited to the exchange of rocket fire or individual attacks this year. That's because an unprecedented attack occurred in October when Hamas militants broke out of the Gaza Strip and launched a full-scale surprise offensive which saw them overrun towns and villages in southern Israel, killing, at the time of writing, at least 900 people and taking dozens of hostages. The Israeli government in response bombarded Gaza and vowed a complete siege of the small but dense territory of 2 million people, with the Israeli defense minister saying that it meant no electricity, no food, no water, no fuel. Progress has been made this year towards the end of the war in Yemen, with a ceasefire largely holding and ongoing negotiations between the Houthis on one side and the Saudis on the other. A breakthrough agreement between Saudi Arabia and Iran, who back the Houthis, to re-establish diplomatic ties has raised hopes that a settlement can be reached to end Yemen's 9-year war, though there is still a long way to go, and Yemen's humanitarian situation remains dire. The breakaway region of Nagorno-Karabakh was once again at the center of a conflict this year. But this time, Azerbaijan, through a 24-hour military campaign, managed to fully take control of the territory after blockading it for months. The ethnic Armenian separatists in the region have agreed to disarm, and its leadership have announced the dissolution of the unrecognized republic. In the wake of Azerbaijan's takeover, nearly all of the region's 120,000 strong Armenian population has fled to Armenia, in what the country has described as an ethnic cleansing. Next up, Myanmar remains racked by civil war more than 2 years since a coup overthrew the country's civilian government. Now, this conflict is largely between the military junta and the exiled National Unity Government, whose armored wing is now allied with a number of local armed groups. Now, the junta is increasingly using airstrikes to try and counter the widespread armed resistance, with the UN saying that the military and its allies are engaging in more frequent and audacious war crimes and crimes against humanity. So that just about wraps up our list, and as you can see, there are lots of things that have already happened this year, with many millions of people affected. But let us know which areas you think are overlooked, and which ones deserve more attention from the international community. A couple of years ago, I was the victim of identity theft, and I only found out when I got a court letter saying that I owed money to a broadband company at an address I'd never lived at. And I'm not alone here either, with victims of data breaches rising by 41.5% in 2022. Now, all of that stolen data is very often being added to commercial databases, with data brokers potentially aggregating your personal information, including your name and aliases, social security number, login credentials, home address, location history, online activity, and more. All of which is available for purchase by businesses and could fall into the hands of criminals too. Fortunately though, Incogni are here to help. That's because Incogni reach out to data brokers on your behalf, request your data's removal, and deal with any objections. Plus, as brokers often continue to collect data even after takedown requests, Incogni continue to keep watch. So whenever a new record pops up on a data broker site, Incogni will automatically take care of that too. And even if you're not worried about your data being stolen, we all deal with endless junk mail and robocallers, both issues that Incogni's services could help cut down. So create an account using our link in the description, grant Incogni the ability to work on your behalf, and sit back as they make you safer. Plus, by using our link, you'll get an exclusive 60% off an annual Incogni plan. Thanks for checking them out, using our link, and thanks to Incogni for sponsoring this video.
War that we are going to see very, very soon. And I'm sure this video helped you to understand all the countries that are at war and where this is leading to. So it's important to take note of what is happening around the world, because this will help us to prepare for what is to come. Now, the first thing I want to talk to you about is the Israel-Hamas war. This war started last year in October 7, when the terrorists from Hamas coming into Gaza to kill more than 1,000 people in the kibbutzim and some towns in southern Israel. So this sparked the Israel-Hamas war, where Israel entered into war with Hamas, and the conflict go even to Lebanon, because there are proxies from there fighting Israel. And also right now it involves Iran as well, because they send missiles in to Israel, more than 200 of them, so Israel retaliate. Will this escalate into a major war? We got to watch and pray what's going to happen. People are asking, is this the Ezekiel 38 war? Does what happened in October 7 lead to the Ezekiel 38 war? Let us find out what is happening, what people are saying. So the question is, will this be leading to the Ezekiel 38 to 39 battle? I think so in some ways, but not as yet, because everything, according to God, there is a timing. There is a timing for everything. There are signs and seasons you need to watch out for. But the players are all there already, as you can see. Gog and Magog, Russia, Togarmah, Turkey, and Meshech and Tubal. You see, all these are preparing, I believe, are preparing for the war that is to come, because these are the main players. In Ezekiel 38, verse 3 and 16, it says, "Thus says the Lord God, behold, I am against you, O Gog, the prince of Rosh, Meshech, and Tubal. You will come against my people Israel like a cloud to cover the land. It will be in the later days that I will bring you against my land, so that the nations may know me when I'm hallowed in you, O Gog, before their eyes." This speaks about Russia, but it will be in the latter days, not now. So this will finally lead to this big war that is to come between Israel and Gog and Magog. Okay, I want you to look at this very importantly. The war today, where is it taking us to? That's the question. Will a big war come out of this? Not as yet. Now, the next thing that I want to share about is the Ukraine war. The war between Russia and Ukraine is a proxy war. It is not a direct war, but it is a proxy war between US, between NATO or Europe against Russia. And this war didn't happen yesterday. This war happened a few years ago. All right. Since 2014, the nation of Ukraine is already at war. And why the war? The question is, why are they fighting? I believe that this is partly the fault of America and NATO. Because after the collapse of the Soviet Union, there was an agreement made that they will not build NATO near to the borders of Russia. Because even though Soviet Union collapsed, they did not actually have really true peace, because America was quite dirty in the sense that they promised if they disintegrate and become democratic, America will help them. Instead, America played them out, and Russia was left on its own from what they call a communist country trying to be a capitalist country or democratic country. They don't know what to do. Fortunately for Russia, they found oil that is black gold, and because of that, Russia rise up again. Okay, but America being the dominant country in the world, they call it the policeman of the world, will not allow another country to rise up, because under Putin's leadership, Russia rises up very rapidly, and America is not happy, and they don't want Russia to expand any further. So this creates the war since 2014. So I would say partly America and Europe is to be blamed for this war. If they were not encroached near into Russia, this war would not have existed. So who is to be blamed? Well, it depends on the narrative. If you ask the Western media, they will blame it on Russia. And if you ask the Russian media or Chinese media, then they will not blame it on Russia. Yeah. Now, the third war that is now happening is very important to understand as well. Obviously, it started with a trade war during the times of Donald Trump. And this war has progressed from Donald Trump to Biden administration. And it got worse because there is a lot of sanction on China. Sanction in the sense that they force computer chip companies not to sell chip to China so that China will not be able to manufacture products that needed the chips that is from America or Europe, or the machines that produce all these very important modules for the computer, DSML and all these chips that is produced in China. This chip that is produced in Taiwan, America stopped it from selling to China. So because of that, China was crippled, but China quickly started to make its own chip, begin to modify some of the old chips, and then able to function once again. And because of this trade war, it becomes deeper and deeper. As far as Asia is concerned, you'll find Taiwan is the problem. Taiwan is the scapegoat for this battle between America and China. For China, this is a renegade province. For America, they want to protect a democratic country, even though they know that agree that Taiwan belongs to China, but they still want to support Taiwan. You see how illogical it is. But yet, because being the most powerful nation on earth, they do what they like. And we know that Taiwan is the chip that is being played right now. And it is frightening for me. This is the most frightening part of the rumors of war. And you can see Taiwan is involved. Now, Philippines is involved. And I'm very sure Philippines, because Marcos have a lot of finance frozen in America, I believe this is the bargaining chip that Marcos will support America and will use the conflict in terms of the sea conflict to cause a problem, could cause an incident here. China and Japan also has some problem because Japan recently released the treated nuclear water into the sea, and this will contaminate the sea around China, around their own country, Japan, and also Taiwan. So this is a very, very terrible move that America say nothing, the West say nothing about it. It's terrible. This is gross injustice. Yeah. And what's causing the rise in China? South Korean tension. This is the news that talked about some of the things that's happening between South Korea and China, the friction. All these are opportunities for America to intervene. If you look at this map here is the map of China and America and part of the Middle East. You can see the naval base throughout this region. And if you look at China here today, China is surrounded by America. Will it be a repeat of the Opium War, where China lost the battle through the sea? This is a question mark, because it is very dangerous for China. All these aircraft carrier have a lot of weapons. All right, they are very close. they can easily fly to China. Within 20 minutes, they can arrive in China. So China is aware of this. So will this problem escalate into a major war? That's the question. People are asking, US and China on the edge of war in 2024? This is the latest. Will they fight? What do you think? And hear news like how the US is preparing for a Chinese invasion of Taiwan. This is actually media war. US is saying that China is preparing to invade Taiwan, which is not true, but it make it like it is true so that for the people to be alarmed by what China is doing. So China, as far as in the Western world today, they are the bad guys because the media have painted a very evil, a very unfair picture of who they actually are. In fact, China helped a lot of nations, especially Africa, helping them to build hospitals, helping them to build airports, helping them to build ports, and some of the hospitals are given free of charge to some of the African countries. But yet, the report of China is very bad. So will this strife between these two nations lead to a massive world war? That depends a lot. But I want you to watch a video here that gives you quite a fair and accurate perspective about what's going on, but it is not necessarily the correct perspective. I'm going to give you the true perspective of why the West will want a war with China. As you watch this video, it will explain to you clearly from the past history to present day what actually transpired. Very accurate video on what transpired, but the opinion may not be 100% correct. Yeah. So after watching this video, then there are a few things that I need to say to you.
Is war coming to Taiwan and China? And if war does break out, will it turn into a world war that ropes in other countries, like the United States and Australia? These are some of the questions being thrown around right now. China's been sending a record number of warplanes into Taiwan's air defense zone, and Taiwan's foreign minister says tensions between the two are at the worst they've been in decades. The big fear in the international community is that China is edging towards invading Taiwan. An invasion has been on the cards for the past 70 years. It hasn't happened yet, largely because of the United States. But some worry that the careful balance of peace in the region is starting to slip. Before we look at the million-dollar question of how likely a war may be, we need to understand why China is so keen on taking this small island, and why the US are even involved in any of this in the first place. Let's start with some background. There's a good chance that you know of Taiwan as a part of China, or at least connected to China in some way. The reason why there's so much tension between the two is because they both very fiercely disagree on what their relationship actually is. For starters, Taiwan and China both refer to themselves as China, even though most of the world only recognizes this China as China. Taiwan refers to itself as the Republic of China. It's led by President Tsai Ing-wen and sees itself as its own independent country, with its own flag, military, economy, etc. China, on the other hand, which is led by President Xi Jinping, and officially known as the People's Republic of China, says that Taiwan actually belongs to them. They see Taiwan as a renegade province, destined to be unified with the mainland one day. So, how did we end up with two places that call themselves China? It goes back to World War II. At the time, the Republic of China was a member of the Allied forces. It was a military dictatorship led by Chiang Kai-shek's Chinese Nationalist Party, the Kuomintang. At the end of the war in 1945, Japan was defeated, and land that had been occupied, including Taiwan, was returned. Unfortunately, another thing that returned to China was civil war, which had been fought on and off for decades between the nationalists and communists.
400,000 nationalists put up a last-ditch fight against overwhelming red numbers.
By the end of 1949, the Communist Party and its Red Army, led by Mao Zedong, had defeated Chiang Kai-shek, who fled with more than 1 million of his anti-communist supporters to the island of Taiwan. And this is how one China became two. Mao and the CCP established the People's Republic of China, with its capital in Beijing. Meanwhile, Chiang Kai-shek announced that Taipei would be the new temporary capital of the Republic of China, and maintained that its government was the only legitimate authority in China. If you're wondering why Mao didn't just head over to Taiwan to finish the job and crush the nationalists, this is where the United States comes into the story. As the Korean War kicked off in 1950, Western countries were getting more nervous about the spread of communism in the region.
If aggression is successful in Korea, we can expect it to spread throughout Asia and Europe and to this hemisphere.
So, the US established an alliance with Chiang Kai-shek's regime, making an invasion by the People's Republic of China a lot more unlikely. With war pretty much off the table, the situation turned into a political fight for international recognition. Countries around the world were basically forced to pick a side as to who they recognised as the legitimate government of China. Chiang Kai-shek's Republic of China had a head start. It was a founding member of the United Nations in 1945.
China signing first as the first nation attacked in this war.
Even after Mao's victory in the Civil War in 1949, Chiang Kai-shek's government continued to hold China's seat at the UN, and was recognised by most Western countries as the legitimate government of China in the 50s and 60s. Over time, things started to change. By 1971, the PRC had gained enough allies to unseat the ROC at the UN. This is around the time where many countries started to think of the People's Republic of China as China and the Republic of China as Taiwan. By the end of the 70s, the US and Australia joined the growing tide of countries that were switching their recognition to the PRC. The PRC was a lot bigger and more influential on the world stage than the ROC, and had become an attractive trading partner. Not only that, but a breakdown in the relationship between communist powers China and the Soviet Union led to China becoming friendlier with the West, and this was extremely valuable to the United States during the Cold War. Now, I admit this might seem confusing. If the US switched sides in the 70s, why is it seemingly in Taiwan's corner today? The thing is, even though the US switched its recognition because of the economic and geopolitical benefits, it still maintained a form of alliance with Taiwan that continues to this day. Countries like the United States and Australia officially recognise the PRC as the legitimate government of China. But in official terms, they only acknowledge, not recognise, China's claim to Taiwan. So they acknowledge the fact that China believes it owns Taiwan, even if they may not agree with it themselves. This creates a bit of a grey area that allows countries to still maintain informal relations with Taipei, even if they don't officially recognise Taiwan as an independent country. Right now, Taiwan exists in a weird kind of limbo, a de facto state of independence. It enjoys a lot of the benefits of being an independent nation in how it runs itself, but officially, it isn't seen as an independent country by the majority of the world. And it faces constant pressure from China to unify. This brings us to 3 key questions. Why does China care so much about Taiwan? Why does the US care at all? And what does Taiwan actually want? Let's start with that first one, China's obsession with unification. A lot of this comes from the importance that China places on nationalism and being proud of one's Chinese identity.
Nationalism in China is like a religion these days. It is absolutely rammed down your throat through mass media, through the film industry, through daily propaganda, through banners on streets.
Chinese nationalism is built on what we call the humiliation-driven kind of nationalism.
There's a concept in China known as the Century of Humiliation. The basic idea is that for about 100 years, China pretty much lost every war that it fought, and it was forced to give up a lot of money and territory to foreign powers. According to the Chinese Communist Party, that humiliation ended in 1949, and since then, the CCP has been determined to restore China to its former glory.
台湾问题因民族弱乱而产生，必将随着民族复兴而解决。
China, bit by bit, has reclaimed territory from imperial colonizers, like in Macau, more recently in Hong Kong. Taiwan, it is sort of like the missing piece of the Communist Party's great triumph.
Which will then further cement the Chinese Communist Party's narrative and status as that great savior of the Chinese nation.
Failing to unify Taiwan would be seen as a bit of a disaster in China.
No regime in China can actually withstand the pressures coming through by losing territory.
They'll be judged historically as great failures if they don't do this, if they can't achieve it.
Okay, so we know why it means so much to China, but what about the US? It comes down to a couple of potential reasons. Firstly, Taiwan is seen as a crucial player in the future of technology.
Taiwan Semiconductor Company produces more than half of the world's high-end semiconductor computer chips.
These chips are essential for practically any kind of computer or advanced electronics, including digital infrastructure like 5G networks. Then there's Taiwan's strategic value. This island chain is home to military bases of the US and its allies, and it becomes a lot less useful if China can just simply bypass them and launch its forces from Taiwan. Finally, a decision by the United States not to step in may impact its relationship with its allies.
The American alliance system kind of depends on it to a huge degree on what happens in Taiwan. If in the end it chooses not to, then it completely undermines the confidence and faith that the Japanese, the South Koreans, the Australians and others would have in continuing their US military alliances if the Americans don't have the stomach to defend Taiwan.
This also goes the other way, and is a reason why an ally like Australia would likely join the US if a conflict did flare up, especially in light of the recent AUKUS Security Pact and nuclear submarine deal. Now, it's time to ask, what does Taiwan want? Things have changed a lot since the authoritarian regime of Chiang Kai-shek, which hoped to retake the mainland and rule a unified Republic of China.
Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek to fight on, whatever the future may hold.
These days, Taiwan is a thriving democracy, led by the Democratic Progressive Party, and most Taiwanese people simply want independence from the mainland. Taiwan! Yeah! China! No! The problem is the DPP is in a tough spot. If it openly announces that it wants independence for Taiwan, it would drastically escalate tensions with China. In order to keep the peace, Taiwan is stuck in this de facto independence limbo. So, with the current stalemate, what happens next? Over the years, China has made an effort to peacefully court Taiwan. China has also proposed a solution known as One Country, Two Systems. If that sounds familiar, it's because it's the agreement that China currently has in place in Hong Kong. It's supposed to allow places like Hong Kong to operate under a unique system of government while still being an official part of China. However, One Country, Two Systems isn't exactly inspiring a lot of confidence in the Taiwanese.
Obviously, as Hong Kong showed, the Chinese government will never really give the Taiwanese people autonomy. The communists just don't have that in their DNA.
Hong Kong is dead! Hong Kong is dead!
What happened in Hong Kong has probably been the worst thing ever for China's efforts to persuade the Taiwanese that the communists would be benevolent rulers. And for that reason, we're now seeing more and more military pressure.
Just a quick side note, Hong Kong and Taiwan's situations are very different. Hong Kong has been an officially, universally recognised part of China for decades, unlike Taiwan.
The big thing which many people in Taiwan always point out is that the PRC has never ruled Taiwan. The communists have never ruled Taiwan.
With persuasion not doing too well and military pressure increasing, it finally leads us to the big question. Is war inevitable? The answer is, understandably, not clear-cut.
The likelihood of a war is very, very slim.
Probably not imminent in the next couple of years because the Chinese military is going through a rapid expansion. And why would they use it now? Why wouldn't they wait another 10 years or 20 years when the gap between their military strength and the US military strength is even smaller?
So, unlikely at the moment, but even if it seems more likely in the future, it's important to remember that war is almost always seen as a last resort, especially when it involves countries that have a lot to lose. Not to mention the fact that we're talking about two nuclear powers going head to head.
What is at play is not just Taiwan alone, but China's international status, its recognition as the second largest economy in the world that is built upon free trade, globalization. That is something that China cannot back off from.
All of this is a big reason why a lot of the moves being made right now are all about trying to win this tussle without actually having to fight.
I don't think the aim is to build up to a point where China actually wants to invade. I think the aim over 5 years, 10 years, 15 years will be first to say to the United States, hey, look, our military is almost on parity with yours. If we do this and you come in, this will be an incredibly bloody war. It will be a stalemate and you'll end up withdrawing and we will win. So don't come in. And the second thing is send the message to the Taiwanese that, hey, look, Washington can't save you and we're going to get you one way or another. So your best bet is to come together and agree on our terms to, some sort of partial autonomy.
You can already see this kind of thinking in action now. Just take a look at what started this whole discussion in the first place, the record number of Chinese warplanes being flown into Taiwan's air defense zone. It's all about showing what China is capable of and trying to make things seem hopeless for the Taiwanese and defeat inevitable. So, all things considered, unless there is a drastic change to the current situation, it seems like this stalemate isn't going away anytime soon.
Like I say again, if you look at this map here, you find that the Western world gang up together against Russia and China. So the rest of the nations are just followers. The Western nation control part of Africa, part of South America. India is a fence-sitter. They may be the pawn here. And Saudi Arabia, you can see all this is a game that they play. And if you ask me what is the real reason behind all this, I'm going to tell you the truth as it is. The best person to tell you is Ray Dalio. Watch his video on changing world orders. It is FOC, and it will give you a very clear perspective of what is going on. In this video, what I call documentary, he speaks about the civilization of the world, and he shows you each civilization that came up to the peak, like the Greek civilization, the Roman civilization, the Ottoman Empire. There's a peak, and after the peak, they will go down. Today, the Western world, whether it's America, whether it's Canada, whether it's Australia, New Zealand, or Europe, or United Kingdom, it's reached a peak already. It cannot progress further because, very simply, if you go to the West, everything is expensive. Whether it's gas, whether it's electricity, whether it's food, it is expensive. It is expensive because basically it costs a lot to produce everything. That's why all the shoes, the clothes you wear, sunglasses, glasses, computers, phone, even iPhone is made in China. Everything is made in China because it costs less. Why does it cost less to make in China? Because the salary of the people in the Western world is too high, and they have too many benefits. What I mean by the benefits, that means they work less hours, more pay. There are some people here in United Kingdom, they are 4-day week. Many of them work from home, all right, and work less hours, more pay. It's not sustainable. You cannot compete with the world if you do not have the resources or you don't have cheap labor. So what happened is now the Western world survive on a lot of copyright, trademarks, all right, all these legal stuff that they have, all right, they survive by this. So that if you want to use their computer chip, you have to pay a lot of money. They control, like for example, they use in the in the sound world, in amplifiers and all that, you have Dolby Sensurround. You have to just pay for that name to use that what they call sound engineering. You have to pay for it. Tetra Pak, you have to pay for it. So a lot of the Western industry today survive on their trademarks or patents. Okay, so this is their last frontier, and it's the peak already. If China comes up with better technology in terms of making the chips, making the processors, they came up with better technology, then it will hit the West very much, like the EV or the electric vehicle. The electric vehicle from China is cheap and really good and reliable as compared to the West. The West started this idea of a global warming and want to force everybody to use electric car, but they couldn't produce the car as efficiently as the Chinese factories. Now, they are so scared of it that they are telling you that don't use electric car, okay? Hydrogen car, because why? They are losing in terms of technology. So because of this, if you ask me my opinion, in order to lead, continuous to lead, they need to have a war. War is expensive, okay? It's expensive, but a war will help the Western country to rise up again. In the first place, when they started the war, there will be a lot of heavy costs, but eventually they will get back because they lead. Once they lead, they control the finances of the world. And the truth is that there are no winners in any form of war. There are only losers. Look at the First World War, Second World War. It bankrupted Europe. That's why you have NATO, which is actually, there's a promise that America will protect Europe. Okay? So they don't have good soldiers. They don't have good, what you call, weaponaries. It's all American support. So war can bankrupt a nation. Most nations would not want to go to war. So as for you and me, what could we do? Very importantly is to pray. To pray for what? For more time. For more time to do what? That is to save as many souls as possible. This is what we need to do as Christians. And if you ask me, war is in the air. That's definite. But we want to have a delay. It will come anyway because God talks about it. Wars and rumors of war, it will come. Like birth pangs, it will come. But there can be a delay so that we can still do the work. So my message tonight to all of you is, what are you doing? If war comes, nobody can do evangelism anymore. We will be looking for food. We will be hiding in bomb shelters. We will be concerned with other things rather than evangelizing people. Even right now, when you have the freedom to do it, you don't do it. You think during war you do it. So let us really wake up. It's time to wake up. Every country should wake up because the world needs us. The world needs Jesus before he comes back. When he comes back, I'm sorry, it is too late. I hope this helped you to understand a little bit about what's going on. Amen.